Hey, folks. I am here. And it didn't take nearly as long today. That's good. That's very good. Okay. Let me know in chat if you can hear my microphone just fine. I can't hear it. And let's go ahead and turn that off. Close that out. And I can take that off because I don't need it anymore. Welcome. This is the WebdriverIO workshop that we'll be going through. That's so funny that it's there. What we're going to start off with is I'm going to be walking you through. I did this workshop a while back and almost a year ago. And I wanted to kind of try it in an online format. This is my first time actually trying this online, so not really sure how exactly I want to get this running, but what I plan to do is just kind of show you how to set this up, how to walk through the first couple. If we're lucky, we'll get to the third on this, but if not, we'll just get as far as we can get. So I'll be going through installation and setup of WebdriverIO, and then we'll get into the basics of Mocha, Chai, and assertion. So this is kind of a starter to WebdriverIO. So I'm going to paste this into the chat. Please say hi in chat so I know you're watching along. Yeah, let me know kind of where you're at with WebdriverIO, and hopefully this helps you out. So to get started, we're going to be using a couple of services today. You don't have to use Cloud9. Cloud9 is an online IDE that lets you edit files and then run them immediately on their service. Got a 404 for that link. Oh, I wonder if it's public. Should have worked. Yeah, it says it's public. Got a 404. Let's see if I click it. Oh, yeah, it didn't work for me either. How? Like, what? And now if I refresh the page, that's been something wrong with that link. It's like the exact same link. Okay, well, I'll just resend it. Let's try this. Okay, try that link and let me know how that goes. There's going to be a lot of back and forth today, which is the difference between most of my usual live streams and today is I wanted this to be more back and forth, kind of like, hey, this didn't work for some reason, and me trying to help out. I can't promise that I'll actually help out, but that's the hope. So same issue. I wonder if YouTube is changing something in it. Yeah, it's got a redirect in there. What if you just copy and paste it? So I will try that. So just copy and paste. I bet something with a YouTube redirect. No, that didn't work either. github.com, klamping, WebdriverIO workshop. That is so weird. Tell me the difference between these two URLs real quick, because I see not a single one. Yet, if I paste that in, it takes me there. Is that not the weirdest thing? I mean, what is changing between the two? Okay, so how about that? If you copy the link to a file, the dash is different? Dude, that is so weird. Okay, well, I have no idea. You know, you expect stuff is gonna pop up, but you never expect things like this to pop up. Okay, so this is the workshop. Now that we've got that link there, I've got a Cloud9. So if you go to c9.io, and I'm not going to paste that in because it causes issues. You actually have to. You can sign in with your GitHub account if you want to. They used to require a credit card. I don't know if they do anymore, but because they got bought out by Amazon, and so they may not require a credit card anymore, but you don't have to use this. I'm going to use it so that you can take a look at this code as I go through it, and you can kind of jump in it yourself. So I'm going to open up this README file. That's kind of funny that this shows as Markdown, but this doesn't. Preview? There we go. Cool. Okay, so I can get it to preview. So I mentioned Cloud9 if you want to. Otherwise, you can use your local computer as long as you have Node.js installed. When you do install this through Cloud9, when you do the checkout, so actually I'll do this real quick. If I go to my dashboard, and this is how you're going to check it out. You'll create a new workspace. And this is really useful if you don't have Node.js installed on your machine. But you'll go into there, you'll copy the Git URL, and then make sure you select Node.js, and then hit Create Workspace. That's going to take you, oh, you have to enter a project name too. But this is going to create a workspace, which is basically what I've got here. It'll pop up for that. And it'll have Node installed. So you can come to this command line, and you can see we already have Node installed. We don't have WebdriverIO installed yet, but we will get to that in a minute. The other thing is a Sauce Labs account. Let me see. I'll probably just create one since I think I don't have one. So yeah, I'll create an account in a minute to get there. Yeah, actually that's step number 1 in this exercise is to create a Sauce Labs account. So this is going to be useful because we're not going to be able to run Selenium on here because we would have to have Chrome installed and a whole bunch of stuff. So this is going to be me. Let's see, workshop at, we'll go with that. Username would be kwork. And a standard password. Sure. And yes, I am not a robot. And now I have to prove that I'm not a robot by doing a robot's job. That has a car in it. Cool. It's been verified. I am not a robot. Amazing. So happy to see that. Oh, field. Yep, that's... and I have to click that I'm not a robot again. And I have to type my password again. Jeez. Okay. Oh my gosh. You happy now? Are you happy now? I put in fake information for you. I hope you're happy. I hope that was worth it. Oh, good. Now I have to verify that, and hopefully that email address works. I don't actually know if that email address works. I've never done this before. Unwatch this inbox. Yeah, it's not gonna like that. I need a better inbox service, one that Sauce Labs is okay with. How about that one? Okay, it's good with that one. So we're going to wait for that email to come in. There we go. And we're going to verify. Click this link. So this is how you can get a Sauce Labs account pretty easily. For just temporary testing. This is only for testing purposes. For testing. If you want to test your test, you got to do it like that. If you want a real account, if you're actually going to use this for real stuff, I highly recommend actually paying for a real account. Because this I just do because I can't quite afford. I use business like when I do this in my professional job, it's paid for through the company, but I don't use testing, like automated testing in my personal work all that much because it's just, I barely have any time to work on personal work as it begins with, so, or personal projects as it is. So this is how I manage to get things set up so that I can show off how you can use this. Anyway, long-winded way of just saying why I do the things I do. Okay, so this is my account and everything. If I go back here, so I've created the Sauce Labs account, done. Clone the WebdriverIO workshop. So that was done through Cloud9. If you'd like to, you can also clone this down to your local machine. You might have to replace this with Git instead of HTTPS. It depends on how you have your stuff set up. So not that one. You clear that out. You would just do a Git clone and then paste that in. And that's how you would run it on your local. But we already have this cloned. So we're done with that step. Next step is to install WebdriverIO, which I'm actually going to do here in the command line so that we can kind of share this. And then I think if I hit share on here, editor, application, I think I can share, copy that, and public. That way, I'll paste this in here, and if you don't mind trying that out and letting me know if that works or not, that would be great. Okay, so WebdriverIO is installed, and the whole point of sharing that is you can kind of copy and paste the code as I go through it. That's step number one, set up WebdriverIO config. Okay, so now we've got WebdriverIO installed as a local dependency. I'm kind of glossing over this NPM stuff. I'm going to have to assume that you either know NPM already or you don't care enough about it to want to get into it. And if you do, it's really cool stuff, but it's going to just, I'm just going to have to take my word for it that this is how you do it. You install the module through there, and then now we're going to run this node modules bin command. Oops. And this is going to run our setup. So I'm going to pop that up, and then I'm actually going to bring that up here. We are going to test on Sauce Labs. Check something real quick. Let's move you over there, and I'm going to move my body across the screen, just like that. How was that? Did you get to watch me fly across the screen? That way you can kind of see, whoops, where am I? What am I doing? Okay, that way you can see down here. It's a little hard to see. I do admit that. Can I? No, I wanted to make this text bigger. I think I have to go into the settings if I wanted to actually do that. So I don't want to spend time on that. I'm going to test in the cloud using Sauce Labs. So my environment variable for username and password. So we'll set that up in just a minute. But we're going to use Sauce username and Sauce access key. We're going to test in Mocha. So we'll say Mocha. I do want it to install the adapter. My tests are going to be located under test/specs. Sure, let's go with that. I usually get rid of the specs folder, but for today, I'm just going to keep it just so we don't have to worry about that. I like the spec reporter, so I'm going to install that. And then we are going to use the Sauce service because we are testing through Sauce. And let's see if there's anything else we want. No, we're good. Install that. I'm going to use verbose logging because I just want y'all to see everything that goes on there. screenshots if it fails, and then the URL that we're going to test. What was the URL that we're going to test? Oh, why can't I scroll this anymore? That's weird. Okay. That's what we're going to test. This site. I forgot what the URL was. So, we're going to test this site. I'll hit enter, paste that in. You can get that information from this framework. If you're just joining, let me again share this address, github.com/klamping/WDIO workshop. You could also go to my Twitter account, and it should be on there as well if that link doesn't work. I would paste it in the chat room, but apparently that's not working. So that's what we're going through today. All the instructions are under exercises. You just go to installation and setup, which is what we're looking at right now. We're going through these exercises, and I'm using the Cloud9 IDE so I can share it. And I'll share this link again. And I wonder... I can't. Info and settings. I think what I'm going to do is come into here and add that to the description. That and I'm adding it to the description of the video, so you can just hit refresh if you would like to get those links. There we go. So you should be able to refresh the stream page to get those links. They're in the description now. Okay, the next item, we're set up our config, got that done, add Sauce Labs credentials. This is the next thing we have to do. And remember when we were looking through here, it asked us where we want to save our environment variable for our username and access key. That's what this is talking about. So in order to log into Sauce Labs to run tests on it, we have to have our username and access key defined. And in order to do that, sorry, getting distracting myself for no reason. Where did I go? What's that? Weird. Okay, anyway. In order for your WebdriverIO to know this information, it's going to need to, we're going to need to save our username and access key. So there's a bash RC file, which if we come over here and we're going to do, nope, not there. Drop down, show hidden files. Okay, so it is hidden. Oh, there used to be a bash RC file. Maybe not. Oh, is it there? No, C9 project settings. I forgot where that bash RC file ended up. You would have one, but it should be on yours. Let me see. If I do like an ls-ltar, not there. I guess they changed it. There used to be a way to edit the environment variables on this machine, but it's a bit different from what I remember it. So what I'm gonna do is, let me see, if I do an echo sauce username, nothing is gonna come out. So I'm gonna export my sauce username, come up over here, copy my username, paste it in. Now if I echo that again, you can see it appears there. The bash RC part is, if I come down, it basically saves these lines so that anytime you open a new tab or a new terminal, it's going to run these commands and set your username and access key. So that's why you'd want to try adding this to your bash RC file. I'm actually going to skip right past that today, just for the sake of time. Okay, so I've got my username stored. I'm going to export my access key as well. And typically they don't like you showing this online, but this is a temporary account, so it doesn't even matter, I don't think. If you wanted to do something malicious, you could just create your own temporary account and do it maliciously. So anyway, we've got our access key now, and so I'm going to clear that so we can get a little bit more room up here so you can see that a little bit better. Okay, we've got our access key. That's the next step. And then the last step, there is one pre-written test in here. Let me see. Yeah, under test, there's a test called basic. That goes to the base URL. That's going to need to be ./ I'm going to have to update that. Again, it's been a while since I've done this. We're going to actually run this by running that / node modules / bin / WebdriverIO. That's right. It says it didn't match any file because when I defined this, I used specs. Let's change that real quick to get rid of that. So I just opened up the WebdriverIO configuration file. This configuration file gets generated when we run the first time we run this wdio command. Okay, so oops, I gotta save it. Run it again. And so this is a big file to go through. We're not going to talk through all of it. Actually, now's actually a decent time to talk through it because we're actually running our test. You can see here's the output, and it actually did run. And now if we go back over to Sauce Labs, we have a session running, and we go to our dashboard to automated test. Here's the test that we just ran. So we can actually play through this. You can see it loaded our robot parts emporium and ran our test, got the URL. Actually, it changed the URL, got the title of the page, and then deleted the session. That was pretty quick. I wasn't expecting it to be that quick. All of this output is output from WebdriverIO to get the information on the page and log out the test. We'll look at the test in just a second. Just want to double check something real quick. Cool, okay. Had to make sure the stream's still running. Okay, yeah, those links are there now as well. So we're about halfway done with the hour. Let's look at our test. So I mentioned that this is the configuration file. I'm actually going to skip through it. This runs in Firefox. You can change that to Chrome if you want to change that to Chrome. But overall, there's some information in here, but it's I don't want to spend too much time on it. What I want to jump into is this basic test. There are a couple parts to this test. The first is the describe block. This is a Mocha.js thing. So it asked us when we were setting up our configuration file what test framework we want to run in, and we chose, or I chose, Mocha.js. And that's a test framework that you can actually use for things like unit testing. We use it for functional testing or end-to-end testing, whatever you want to call it. And in this, you define your test in blocks. So you have a describe block around everything. So you're kind of describing an overall idea. So here they're testing an array. And then they're going to test a function on the array. They're testing index of. They're going to wrap that in another describe block. And then they're going to test one scenario of the index of function. So here, it should return -1 when there is no value present. So we're going to say our array, run the index of function on it, pass in the value 4, and we're going to expect that to return -1. So that's the describe and the it blocks. So if we jump back over here, we have a describe block of the test. We have our it block saying it should run. It's a dumb names here, but it gets the point across. And then our actual test that we run here. We don't do an assertion, so that we'll get to in just a second. Here's an assert equals. It's checking that this value that's returned from this function call is the same as this value. We don't get there yet, but we will in just a minute. So all this right here is Mocha, which is your test runner. And then inside of it, we're using WebdriverIO commands to load the URL. / says load the base URL. Browser.getTitle gets the title of the page. And then we log the page out using a standard Node.js command. So here's that title of the page. Robot Parts Emporium was the name of our title of our page, which is the same thing as here. So if you want to try and get that running, and let me know if you have any issues with it. And I'm going to jump back to installation and do one last thing, which is to increase the timeout. Because we are going into Sauce Labs, it takes a little bit longer to get all that set up. And by default, last time I checked, Mocha has a timeout of 10 seconds or 10,000 milliseconds. We're going to increase that to 30 seconds just to avoid a false error. So if I come all the way down here in this configuration file, and again, you don't have to do this, but you can. In this Mocha ops section, we're going to set the timeout to equal 30,000 or 30 seconds. And this Mocha ops will actually match up on the Mocha page. Let's get to it. Mocha ops file support. No, I think we just want options. Maybe that was it. Nope. Configuration, I think, is what we want. I do want to show this, though, because there's a lot of useful stuff inside of this configuration. Okay, here are all the configurations that we can set. And these are the same things, so options here. These are all the options that you can pass in to our Mocha ops object if you want to. So that is just a basic, just a good thing to know about if you want to set some various things. So compilers might be helpful if you want to run your test through something like Babel, but I think WebdriverIO might have an option for that as well. But what we did, we changed the timeout. Let me see, timeout. Yeah, we changed the timeout option. Oh, it defaults to 2 seconds. Yikes. Yeah. So you're definitely most likely going to want to update that. Okay, that's what that is. That's step number 1. Let's jump to the next exercise. And again, feel free to jump in at any point in time and let me know if you have any questions or something's not quite working. If you're just now joining to watch, what I'm going through is a code repo that I made, and there's a link to this document, this editor. If you want, you can open it up and jump in at any point in time. I've already installed WebdriverIO. I believe it's going to stay installed. You will have to create a Sauce Labs account if you want to, your own Sauce Labs account, I believe. I don't think that username and access key is going to still be there. If you want to catch up, you can go through the exercises available in this document. And again, those links are in the description of this stream. So I talked about Mocha a little bit, but I mentioned assertions, but I didn't really get into them. So what are assertions and why do we want to use them? You saw all the way up here that there's this assert equal to actually check that the function that got run returned with a value that we were expecting. In our test, we run this console log.title, but if this title comes back incorrectly, say something changed, it's not actually testing anything right here. It's just logging out the title. We want to actually test it and say, if the title isn't what we expected it to be, then go ahead and instead of saying the test passed, say the test failed and let us know so we can look it up. That's where assertions come in. So we're going to use Chai, and I'm going to open up this API page. In Chai, there's actually 3 different ways that you can write assertions. There is the should way, which is kind of cool. So you have foo should be a, and then you say that foo should have a length of, should have a property of. And so in this Mocha example, it would say that should be equal to -1. So that's a neat way. I do like it, but there are some drawbacks that make me not use it. I don't know if they've ever fixed it, but I didn't use it before, and so I've stuck with what I've known, which is the expect format. So if you want to try should, it's a neat little format, but me personally, I use expect. And expect is a little bit different. We're expecting some value to be a string or to equal bar. So take this example. This would say expect would be here, the function we want to run, and then it would say to equal -1. That's how we would write that. And we're actually going to take a look at that in just a second. I'm going to copy that over to here and paste it in there. We'll get that to, actually we can just do that right now. Title. So we're expecting the title to equal, and in this instance, I'm going to get rid of this console.log. It's going to expect it to equal bar. Let's go ahead and save that and see what happens when we run that. While that's running, since it takes a second to run, I'll show you the third one, which is assert, which is what you saw up here, or basically what you saw. This uses Node.js assert. Chai has its own assert available, but they're pretty similar. Here's that assert equal foo. Chai has a couple extra features to it that Node doesn't have. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Let's jump back over to our page, and expect is not defined. Well, that's a good point. We have expect, but we didn't actually define it. So up here we have assert equals require assert. We need to install Chai. So the same way I installed WebdriverIO, I'm going to install Chai. When you install Chai, it automatically comes with these 3 assertion interfaces. So you don't have to do anything other than that. And then up here, actually, we can come back here and copy that over. Variable expect. Well, where's Chai coming from? We have to require it. So we're going to require the Chai module. The Chai module is going to come with an expect interface on it, which we're going to save to a local variable. Now when we run our test, it's going to have access to that. And this is why you run the code instead of just assuming that what you say is true. And it's running. There's our expected failure, that we expected robot parts emporium to equal bar, which it is not. So we're going to update that to our expected value. Expect the title to equal robot parts emporium. Save that and run it one more time. And this failing test should now turn into a passing test. Again, any questions you have, feel free to mention them in chat. Hopefully the chat messages are coming across. I never know with YouTube if they actually are or not. So here we have our passing test now, and with our assertion in there. Okay. So rename the existing describe it blocks. I didn't do that, but we can do that. The names in these are just made up, and they don't matter. They're only going to get reported in your test reporter, and that's it. That's the only place they're used. They're mainly for your reference. You don't need to worry too much about them. But the home page, and what's the other one, should have the correct title. There we go. I'm going to close that down. Instead of should run, I'm going to say it should have the correct title. Now, when I run this, you're going to see this is a bit different. What's next? Install Chai, install and require Chai expect. We did that. Assert the title. We did that. And what we haven't done yet is this before each function. Okay, so here's my updated homepage. Should have the correct title. Now, if we wanted to write another test, say we wanted to check that it has some element, and then we do some stuff in here to check page has an element. See, we have this browser.url in both of our tests. Rather than repeating that in all of our tests that we write, one bit of functionality that Mocha provides are these hooks. So if I go to table of contents, that's what I wanted. Hooks. There are a set of hooks. There's a before hook that runs before all of your tests. It runs once before all of your tests run. There's an after hook that runs once after all of your tests run. There's a before each that runs each time you run a test before your test, and then after each that runs after each test block. We want the before each function, before each hook. And what we're going to do is inside of this describe block, we're going to paste before each, and we're going to move this browser.url up to it. So now before each of my tests, it's going to run this command. So I can come down to here and get rid of that, and it's gone in my first test. And now for each of my tests, it runs that. So when it comes here, it's already run browser.url, and when it comes here, it's already run browser.url. This is a really helpful little trick to reduce the amount of code that you have in your tests. So we did that. Add a new it block. Should contain the correct URL. Okay, let's do that. Should contain the correct URL. How do we want to do this? So it's going to be a lot like our title test. I'll get rid of that comment. We're going to get, instead of getting the title of the page, we're going to get the URL. And I believe that that is just get URL. And let's double check. We're going to go there. There it is. Get URL. Gets the URL of the currently open website, which is going to be there. So I'll copy that and paste it here. Change this to URL. Copy and paste. And we're going to expect the URL to equal this value. And one tricky part about this is if you have multiple sites that you're testing on, so you're testing on like a production site and a local site, this URL is actually going to be different. So this probably isn't the best option, but what we could do is say we'll get rid of that. Instead of saying that we're going to equal that value, we're going to check that it contains. Expect URL to contain this value. And I know that because under in chai there's a reference. And in here should have, let's search for it, contain. Alias includes, contain, and contains can be used instead of include. So I'm going to say contain here, expect, or it could say include, or I could do contains. These are all the same. I'm going to stick with contain because that's how I wrote this. So I'm going to expect the URL to contain this value. That way, if my base URL does change, it's not going to break it. So if I'm testing on a local machine instead of on my production, it's not going to change. So there we go. I'm going to run my test again, and now I should have 2 passing results come in. And let's see what's next on this. Contains. That's what we did. That's our new test. So that's going to end that exercise. And we have our 2 passing test right here. Should have the correct title and should contain the correct URL. So even though we didn't have the full URL, again, we used the contain to check only part of the URL. Okay, that ends that exercise. Again, feel free to jump out in chat and let me know if you have any questions. If that's not working, I am available on Gitter on the chat room, the WebdriverIO chat room. Feel free to reach out on there if the chat room is not working in YouTube, because sometimes technology doesn't work. That's why we write tests for it. Next up, we talked about tests. Now let's write a few more tests in here. So we're going to go through a couple of common commands that we'll want to use. Let's see. Add a new test case for validating that the CR vast robot selection works. So right here, there's a CR vast robot selection button. We want to validate that when we click it, it takes us to this product page. We'll use the click to click the button and navigate to the product page, and then assert that we are now on the product page. That's exercise number 1. And so let's look at how to do that. We know how to write a new test, so I'm going to do that. It should have a call to action button that takes you to the product page. Okay, so that's the test I'm going to be writing. I've already am going to be on this page. So what I need to do is let's check that the button is there. Click the button and then check that the URL is correct. And instead of URL, I'm going to do the page title is correct. So to check that the button is there, we're going to use a WebdriverIO command. We'll type exists. There is an isExisting command that we're going to use. So browser.isExisting, and this is going to tell us either true or false whether an element on the page exists, is there. And that's regardless of if it's hidden or not. It's always going to show true. So even if it's hidden, it's still going to be there, and that's okay. We could do like there's an isVisible command that also works, but we're going to use isExisting. So I'm going to do a new variable, CTA exists. We'll call it does CTA exists. And then we're going to do browser.isExisting. And we need to tell WebdriverIO what element to look for. And we're going to use a CSS selector to do that. So if we come back here, you see there's these values here that start with a pound sign or a hash sign, and then a value. This is actually a CSS ID selector. These are all ID selectors. We're going to use a class selector. So to get that selector, I'm going to come back to our Robot Parts Emporium page, right click, do inspect. And this is in Chrome that you can inspect this. And then you see here's the element that we want to check. And there's a couple of identifying values on here. We could actually just right click, copy selector, and come back over here and paste that in. And this would give us a selector that would only find this element. It would only mention this element. There's no other element on the page that would match this selector. And a selector is a way of targeting elements on a website. That's cool, but we can actually get rid of most of this. And I only know this because I've worked on this website. You know, I kind of built it all out from scratch. So I know that there's only one shop callout div on the page. And I know that there's only one button inside that shop callout. And this is good to reduce your selectors down to make them less specific when you can. Because say somebody comes in and they change this from text center to text left, it shouldn't break our test. That button is still going to be there, but it's going to say that it's not because the class name was changed. So I'm going to delete all that. This is called a direct child selector. So it's saying it has to be a direct descendant, a direct child of this div. If there was another div surrounding this link or something else surrounding this link, making it another child, it wouldn't work. So I'm going to get rid of that as well because it's a little bit more specific than I want it to be. I want somebody to be able to add a div or a span in here to if they wanted to style it up or something. So I'm just going to say shop callout, whatever link is inside the shop callout, that's what I'm going to be checking. So these are CSS selectors. I'm not going to go over them because they're an entirely other topic, but I think I have a page here that talks about, a link here that talks about different selectors in WebdriverIO. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do my assertion. I'm going to do my expect, does CTA exist to be true? And that's a chai assertion here. And I know this just by looking through this documentation again and again and again. Here you see to be true. It's right there. Okay, the next item. So once we validate that the shop button is there, we're going to click the button. So I'm going to say browser, and this one's crazy, click. And then I'm actually going to pass in that same selector here. Shop button. And I could say this as a variable and pass the variable in instead. So I'll say variable CTA selector is equal to shop callout.a. Move that over there. So now instead of repeating the selector as a string, we're going to reference a variable. And the point of doing that is so that in case this needs to change, the shop callout, I only have to change it in one spot instead of multiple spots. So that's the only point of that. So what this is going to do, it's going to click the button. So let's go ahead and click the button ourselves. And it's going to take us to our Robot Pots Emporium product page. And we want to validate that, what did we say? Check that the page title is correct. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to copy this page title over and expect title to equal, well, it's not going to equal Robot Parts Emporium anymore. It's going to equal this totally not eatable sentient robot. So I'm going to copy that since it's the same. I could actually come into the head and copy that over in the title in my inspector. And then we're going to paste that in, expect the title to equal. I'm actually going to change that to another to contain and get rid of that part. All I want to know is that it's on that page. So in case the name of my Emporium changes to Robot Parts Emporium and more, say somebody comes in and changes that, it's still going to pass this test because it's still checking this. There are other ways that we could check that we're on the right page. We could do the URL. We could check for an element on the page. We could do another like is existing check. It really just depends on your needs. So I'm going to save that and we're going to run this test. And we have 3 passing tests. If we go back over to Sauce Labs, we can check out, let's see, can I go back? There we go. Automated tests, I'm going to refresh this page. So we have the home page here. Should have the correct title. So it goes to that URL, gets the title. And what's really nice about Sauce Labs, we can play through this. And so when I should have the CTA button, we go to the homepage URL, we get an element on the page, we click that element. So this element's call is what the is existing is checking. This is what's clicking that. And you can see after we've clicked it, it's updated our page and we get the page title. And then finally it deletes the session when we're done. So that's how you can validate that that all worked. Okay, so that I'm going to leave this last one up for you to check out. But basically, we create a new page, a new file. I'm going to do a product page, a new test inside of it, and it's going to set the value in here, and then click Buy Now. Very similar. I think the only real difference is that we're using set value, and we're also using get text. Get text will be used. Let's see. That one can be a little bit tricky. I just want to double check. Yeah, so the one thing about this get text selector is that it has to be an interactable item. Interactable is basically a form element. Jump down to interactable. It didn't. So it has to be a form element. In this instance, let's see. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I thought it had to be a form element. I think it's actually a little bit different. Let's see. Element not interactable. Okay, which you can either click with a pointer or use a keyboard to. So I'm guessing any sort of text that you can click is interactable because you can click it. Pointer interactable. Defined to be the first element defined by the paint order found at the center point of its rectangle. Wow. I guess this is just saying make sure that the element is visible and that it's not some weird element. So yeah, this span here is invisible. So when you try and get the text of it, it actually outputs to empty string. So just be aware of that. I actually made more of a deal about that than I probably should have. But then you have your expect button equal to equal purchasing. So that's going to end this half of it. I'm going to take a short break for about 30 minutes. And then if you are a student of my course, or if you become a student in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to send you a link for the second half of this workshop. If you were already a student of this course, then you should have gotten the link in your email this morning. I'm not going to, if you sign up in the next 30 minutes, I will personally send an email out to you with the link to the second half of this workshop. We're going to go through some extra utilities. And what I need to do, we're going to go through utility commands, debug, and next steps. Debug's a really cool one. I've got a video on it, but that's at learn.webdriver.io, and I've got a 40% off sale today. It's ending today in 8 hours, 8.5 hours, no, 9 hours. And you just come down here and you can do either the starter edition or professional if you'd like the second half of the course. But just hit enroll now and go through there. If you have any issues, feel free to email me. There's an email right down here. Hopefully it works. Somebody mentioned that questions doesn't work. Yeah, this questions email apparently doesn't work for some people. But just hit that if you have trouble ordering it. I'll send you the link even if you don't get the order in the next 30 minutes or so. But this is going to be for students. So that's that. Thanks for watching along. Please, if you want to say bye, I'd appreciate it in the chat room. Just let me know what you think, what I could do better, because I would like to do this workshop again. Basically the same idea, just go through the first 3 exercises in this kind of format, maybe get a little bit more interaction going on. But yeah, feel free to send that in chat or email me at clamp, KLAMP.in, or Kevin at learnwebdriverio.com. Either one, and I will see my students who are joining along in 30 minutes at 3:30. So thanks for watching along, y'all, and we'll see you in a little bit. Bye.